approximately 24 months to the 2017 general election, and the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, recently launched its 5-year strategic plan on improving the electoral process in Kenya and providing a level playing field. However, this immediately became the opposition coalition CORD's latest fight with the electoral body. As it were, CORD has threatened to boycott the 2017 elections if the IEBC remains as is currently constituted. Over the years, the Kenyan electoral body has undergone numerous changes, culminating in the current IEBC. So what is the way forward in making the IEBC effective and credible in the way it is perceived by both Kenyans and political players involved in the electoral process? This is Behind the Headlines. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, has its work cut out in the run-up to the 2017 general election. IEBC is again at loggerheads with political parties, especially the opposition coalition CORD, over the strategic plan recently launched by the Isaac Hassan-led commission. Trouble began on July 8, 2015, one day before the IEBC was set to launch the 5-year plan. The electoral body had invited CORD leaders for a pre-launch meeting to get their views on the plan. However, CORD did not take it kindly and immediately made their grievances known.
We have proposed to the Commission that they postpone the intended launch tomorrow so that there can be more consultations with other stakeholders, so that there's also some input from other stakeholders. There are very critical issues that are involved here, which requires extensive consultations.
Nonetheless, the IEBC ignored CORD's demands and went ahead to launch the 2015 to 2020 strategic plan.
It was our view then that we needed to internalize the strategic plan so that we can then give them our input and point out areas of strength, areas that they needed to reinforce. So that then that for me was going to be a process of legitimacy. In fact, there is a demand of the Constitution that you involve or have the participation of the people, and the people here extend to stakeholders. So therefore, I think in some of these practices, institutions like IEBC, which are put under severe scrutiny and spotlight, need to have a broader strategy to engage a wide array of stakeholders, particularly those whose confidence is extremely battered.
The IEBC chairman Ahmed Isaac Hassan has been busy in shuttle diplomacy in efforts to have political parties embrace IEBC's plan. But the Jubilee coalition has faulted IEBC's move, saying that the electoral body should not seek validation from political parties.
As a party, we had not even heard of that before. As a coalition, we did not know that they were even working on this strategic plan. Then they invited CORD to attend. And CORD told them, you have been doing this thing in secrecy. We are not going to attend. You won't believe it. They went into a panic mode. Now they invited us. In less than 12 hours, I was requested to mobilize the Jubilee Brigade. And we met them at Laiko. And they were inviting us, saying that CORD has told us that we should not launch this strategic plan. My simple question to them was, what business did you even have asking political parties to come when you are launching your strategic plan? Or why do you want us to validate yours?
As a commission, we felt because we uphold the values of accountability and transparency, we felt we needed to engage with the political players. So we called various stakeholders. We started with the civil society organizations and partners. We then called the media, and we also called the political parties. But when the political parties came, we even admitted we had probably made an error when we said they come for validation, because we had not had an initial meeting on the strategic plan, and we actually regretted the error.
You do strategic plans to serve your stakeholders. So sometimes it is important to have stakeholders. If IEBC was operating in a vacuum, then it did not involve part of the stakeholders. But I think in the circumstances, IEBC needed to invite the stakeholders, because one of the principal stakeholders are the political parties.
The question of whether or not the IEBC should manage the 2017 general election has continued to shape public debate ever since the 2013 polls. CORD have not made secret their mistrust of the IEBC and have reiterated their calls to have the Electoral Commission disbanded.
We believe that right even before the elections itself, we already were positioned for failure. And when parties or an institution of IEBC stature works in cahoot with the executive at a point in time, and to have a process that is so flawed that its credibility is questionable across within the various formations of the political contestation, then one starts to wonder whether IEBC needs to be revamped in a manner as to give integrity to the process and to the commission. And the grievances here extend not only to the failure of the BVR systems or the electronic systems of voting, which we believe finally were corrupted.
Yes, we had challenges, and not with BVR. BVR, we are clear, and we keep on saying BVR worked 100%. The only challenge was that we only had 30 days within which to carry out voter registration. And the only challenge was that when we started the BVR, the registration, the first week had a little hitches of the machines not having, the machines not functioning properly, and some of our clerks not having been trained. But within the 30 days, we were able to register 14.3 million voters.
The Jubilee coalition, on the other hand, has continuously differed with their political rivals on the issue, insisting that they have full confidence in the IEBC.
It is the position of the National Alliance and the Jubilee coalition by extension that we have faith and confidence in IEBC to discharge their mandate. What is most important is for us to identify any weaknesses that may exist in IEBC and provide a remedy, be they of a policy nature, be they of legislative nature, be they of human resource capacity. It is not fair that because an institution has been identified to have a weakness here or there, you disband it.
CORD have repeatedly accused the IEBC of mismanaging the 2013 polls, claiming that Jubilee did not win fairly.
There were obvious miscarriages in terms of the skewed voter registration drive. You saw that the BVR or the registration was being carried in a more robust way in certain areas as opposed to other areas. There were issues around the fairness of the process. Insecurity bedeviled some of the CORD strongholds, and IEBC decided not to raise the red flag. IEBC did not conduct sufficient voter awareness in terms of the voter registration. So therefore, registration means therefore you create electoral constituencies that then you are able to support the various candidates and create a balance. So when you see that already from the face of it, one area has been advantaged so much so in terms of its registration and other areas have been disenfranchised, then one wants to wonder, why would you? I do not think it's a coincidence that almost all CORD strongholds were not recording optimum voter registration.
We had a formula that we applied across board in 2012, November, December, when we were registering voters. And I think the complaint that there was maybe bias, I think that is a misplaced concern, because we made sure all Kenyans were registered, and this is why we say 14.3 million Kenyans were registered as voters.
The core principle of CORD, Mr. Raila Odinga, was a presidential candidate in the last elections. No sooner did he lose the elections than he went to court. And that was within his constitutional right. And the law provides for that. If he lost because IEBC was not fair, why did he lose in the judicial system? Let us go back a little while. Every time Raila has lost an election, Raila has demanded the disbandment of the Electoral Commission. In 2008, after the elections with Kibaki, it is not lost to Kenyans and to all of us that Raila demanded that the then electoral body headed by Mr. Kiwitu had to be disbanded. Supported with by the post-election violence that had engulfed our country, people did not rethink twice what was the role of the Electoral Commission. We disbanded Kiwitu. And IEBC was formed with the participation and input of ODM as a party, ODM Kenya then, and PNU. They participated in the parliamentary committees that appointed these members.
Political analysts have also been divided on the issue, with some supporting the disbandment of the IEBC and some terming such a move as retrogressive.
I think the calls to disband IEBC to a certain extent are driven more by the political environment that CORD is trying to cultivate than by a formal or a justified reasons for the disbandment of the institution. And I say this for several reasons. Part of the problems that we had with IEBC in 2013 was because of how short a period they had between when they were instituted and when we had the six general election. Remember, they were constituted in 2011, I think September. By the time they got everything up and running, we were at 2013. I mean, they had actually less than 2 years to do everything they need to do. Now, when I hear the calls to disband IEBC again, I feel as if somebody is trying to set us up so that in case there's a problem in the next election, you have somebody to blame.
It is fair to say that CORD, or Raila for that matter, and Kalonzo, and Wetangula, who was in PNU, did play a major role in identifying, vetting, approving, and constituting IEBC. I am reminded to believe that they must have done that because they had faith and confidence in the men and the women they isolated as being capable of discharging this onerous duty. Then we went into the elections. TNA had just come into existence barely 8 months earlier. URP barely a year earlier. And we won the elections. The men and women who a few months ago were men and women of integrity, men beyond reproach, because an election was lost, all became villains.
For particularly Raila Odinga, you will know that Kibaki could override any decision he would make. He would try to sack one of his ministers and still Kibaki will get him back. So I think Kibaki still held the veto by and large. And then there was this voter registration push closer to the elections, where issuance of IDs became an issue, and even the Parliament did pass a law that you can register with a waiting card. And IEBC chairperson refused and said the law insists that they need to have voter IDs.
He brought you life-changing stories right into your living room.
And the story of Budalangi.
He traveled across continents.
In Atlanta, in Accra, Ghana. In Potato, Maliland, Kigali City.
Interviewed heads of state on governance and human development.
Complete stories that add value to your life.
A CNN fellow.
Production for breeding their cattle.
A food security fellow of Oklahoma State University.
As this was the mode in Hargeisa, we take you to the rural areas of Rwanda.
Over 15 years experience in television reporting.
So peaceful here, so different.
And now, a game changer. You can now watch this program on ADN Channel 5.
Kumekucha Kulichele na mwanakwetu anaitwa Ahmed Darwesh. Kila siku ya Jumamosi na siku ya Jumapili kuanzia mwendo wa saa 1 asubuhi hadi mwendo wa saa 3 asubuhi nikikuletea kipindi nambari 1, Mandhari ya Wiki. Kipindi cha Mandhari ya Wiki ni kipindi ambacho kitakuwa kimesheheni makala, burudani, mahojiano, sanaa na usanii kwa jumla. Vile ikiwemo michezo, kuigiza na mambo kadha wa kadha ambayo yanakuhusu wewe mtazamaji na sisi kwa jumla. Usicheze mbali.
And the case, as you remember, ended up in the court. And although the judgment went in favor of the IEBC, there are still questions that remain. So the current IEBC, to me, it really doesn't matter. They have done what they have done, but the credibility is now being questioned by a sizable number of Kenyans.
Tumwa empathizes with the current commissioners, but also agrees with the idea to disband the IEBC.
IEBC may have to be sacrificed so that we have another institution. Mind you, I'm using the word sacrifice very deliberately, so that we can have another institution which can run the next elections. But as I have said, and I want to repeat, that can only be done, and that can only clean our electoral process if we go back to our constitution. Have some discipline in political parties, have some discipline in the actors, politicians.
Now, if you disband the entire institution, means you're going to be restructuring an entire institution with 1.5 years to another general election. Several things are going to happen. One, we are going to have some people start calling for a postponement of that election, which is not going to be acceptable to a lot of Kenyans. Or we are going to have an election that is flawed, and then we are going to have another problem. Much closer to what we had in 2007 than what we had in 2013. Because already the environment has already been set. You hear people are saying, we will not wait for a Supreme Court decision this time, we will not do this. So we can't play around with the IEBC.
Gabriel Mukele also served in the defunct Electoral Commission of Kenya from 1994 to 2007. When he retired just before the 2007 elections, Mukele was the ECK vice chairman, deputizing the late Samuel Kivuitu. The veteran election manager believes that disbanding the IEBC is not a viable solution.
It is retroactive, and it is not proper at all to disband any independent institution, because it's an institution has been set up, and what we need is to look at what is wrong with it, which we should have been doing all along, putting what is wrong into place. But disbanding an institution is not a solution.
So how does the IEBC as is currently constituted compare to the previous commissions, and how has the transformation been? The push for minimum reforms in 1997 led to the Inter-Parties Parliamentary Group IPPG agreement. This led to a very satisfied political class going into the 1997 general election.
We were taken as opposition commissioners. The 1997 election was not as perfect as we would have liked it to be. But the idea that the opposition also has representation in that commission made things flow. It was accepted. So it is a question of acceptability. It's a question of feeling part and parcel of the process.
By 2007, however, Parliament had not embedded the IPPG agreement into law, 10 years after it was signed.
The ECK was discredited long before the elections came up. So you look back and say it really would not have mattered which way we did. We had been discredited because someone said you had been handpicked by the president, as opposed to the IPPG, which allowed for political parties to appoint.
Following the bungled polls in 2007 and the subsequent skirmishes, a commission of inquiry chaired by South African Judge Johan Kriegler recommended the disbandment of the Electoral Commission of Kenya. So should the ECK have been disbanded back in 2008?
Yes and no. It was justified if the commission committed offenses or did something that was wrong. Then if the commission has failed totally to carry out their duties properly, yes. But no, because they should have looked at what was ailing the election. There was violence. We have never been told in detail what exactly happened. I have never known how it came that only KBC was at the announcement of the results.
There has been another proposal to reduce the number of commissioners from the current 9. But the veteran commissioners have warned against comparing Kenya's electoral system to those of other countries like India with its 3 commissioners and the United Kingdom.
Actually, if you looked at the commissioners for 1997, I think we came from all the provinces, the old provinces. And that was, to me, a very fair deal. Since the constitution limits the number of commissioners in various organizations to 9, the old provinces still, to me, play a very important role. We can go with that, and it's acceptable.
So what is the way forward? The IEBC has conceded to having some problems in the 2013 elections.
When we come to the polling day itself, we had challenges with the EVID, the electronic voter identification device. This is where I think most of our problems were, and as you rightly put it, during the by-elections we have corrected all that. You remember we have 2 kinds of EVIDs, the laptop-based and the handhelds, and they have all worked properly because the challenges of 4th of March 2013 have been addressed. Issues of training, issues of charging, issues of batteries. We have made sure that during by-elections all that is addressed.
Let me give you an example of our own coast region. We have about 1.8 Kenyans who have identity cards. Based on that, only 1.1 were registered, meaning 700,000 of our voters were not registered. And IEBC, for reasons of insecurity, say that eventually, including the MRC, only 800,000 voters finally voted from the coast region. That means that at least 1 million eligible coast voters did not vote.
Various stakeholders have also criticized the electoral body's communication chain, blaming it for many of IEBC's troubles.
I wish Hassan could be a lot more confident of himself. You get the impression that he's not sure. His meekness and his humility, which is very good. I'm not telling him to be proud or arrogant, but I'm saying he needs to be a lot more exerting of his influence. I mean, he's the chairman of the IEBC, for heaven's sake. You see, a lot of what we used to think Kivuito, when you pushed him, he would push you back. He didn't let you get away with making comments just out of the blues. Hassan is allowing people to get away with making some really ridiculous comments about the IEBC and not challenging them.
But when you go out and tell CORD that we wanted you to validate what? Even Jubilee, validate what? I have never called anybody to come and validate my strategic plans here. So sometimes they make blunders that also put them between a rock and a hard place.
And the big question that has been weighing down on the minds of Kenyans is whether or not CORD should boycott the 2017 polls, and what it would mean if that was to happen.
I have a feeling they were trying to feel the water, just try and see what kind of reaction they would receive from the public. I do not think they're going to actually follow through on that position, because I think it's not the kind of threat that you can actually pull off. The problem with Kenya is that you can't boycott elections as a party. What's going to happen? The guys who are in your party are just going to jump into another party, and the only person who will end up boycotting the elections will be the presidential candidate. We saw that with Matiba in was it 1997 or 1992? Yeah, where he threatened to have the party boycott, and the only people who boycotted was him.
And I do sympathize with my brother. Having lost 3 times, he would rather get off the stage in a more respectable way than suffer a 4th defeat, which I can promise you as the Secretary General of this party, I'm preparing to hand him.
Personally, I think it would be unfortunate, because the opposition have a role in elections, and if we are building democracy in our country, then they should also engage in the electoral process. What they should do is engage with the commission before elections. A launch is a ceremony. Yeah, it was a ceremony to say we are ready to work towards 2017. However, even within the launch, we are going to develop an election operational plan.
And as the IEBC embarks on implementing its strategic plan in readiness for the general election in 2 years' time, a lot will be on their minds and on the minds of Kenyans. Does 2013 warrant for the commission to be reconstituted? Would such a move rob the IEBC of much-needed institutional memory? Are constitutional commissions in Kenya sufficiently protected? Is there political will in ensuring that Kenyans have an electoral body they can trust? Ben Kitili, KTN News.